I never thought I'd find myself in this position at 45. Looking around my spacious house in the city's most prestigious neighborhood, I should have felt completely fulfilled. After all, I had built everything from scratch: a thriving chain of spa salons that had become the talk of the town, a beautiful apartment downtown, and this house that most people could only dream of. But something was missing. My name is Jenna Mitchell, and despite all my success, there was an emptiness that no amount of business achievements could fill. Every evening, I'd come home to silence. The house felt too big, too quiet. My friends, most of them happily married with children, would often try to set me up with someone, but nothing ever clicked. "Jenna, you can't keep working 60 hours a week," my best friend Sarah would say. "There's more to life than business meetings and profit margins." I knew she was right, but building my spa empire had been my focus for so long that I'd forgotten how to prioritize my personal life. It started with one small salon in a strip mall, where I worked as both owner and esthetician. Through determination and countless sleepless nights, I expanded to 3 locations, then 5, and now 8 successful spas across the city. I'm happy, I'd insist, whenever the topic of my personal life came up. But was I? The truth was, I'd see mothers and daughters coming to my spas together, sharing laughs and precious moments, and something inside me would ache. One evening, as I sat in my home office reviewing quarterly reports, my phone buzzed. It was Sarah again. "Jenna, don't you dare tell me you're working late again," she said before I could even say hello. "Just finishing up some paperwork," I replied, already knowing where this conversation was heading. "Well, stop whatever you're doing. There's a dinner party at Lisa's house this Saturday, and you're coming. No excuses this time." I tried to protest, but Sarah wouldn't hear it. "There's someone I want you to meet," she added with that tone that meant she was up to something. "Sarah, please don't tell me this is another setup," I groaned. "Trust me on this one, Jen. He's different. He's successful, divorced, has a teenage daughter. He's real, not like those workaholics I've introduced you to before." Something in her voice made me pause. Maybe it was time to take a chance. "Fine," I sighed. "But this is the last time I'm letting you play matchmaker." The dinner party was exactly what you'd expect: good wine, better food, and the kind of conversation that flows easily among old friends. That's when I saw him. David Anderson stood out in the crowd, not because he was particularly striking, but because of the way he carried himself. There was a quiet confidence about him that caught my attention. We moved to a quieter corner of the room, and before I knew it, hours had passed. David was a corporate lawyer who'd been divorced for 3 years. His 15-year-old daughter, Emma, lived with him and her mother on alternate weeks. "It must be challenging, co-parenting a teenager," I said, sipping my wine. David chuckled. "Emma's a good kid, but you know how teenagers are. One minute they're your best friend, the next they're rolling their eyes at everything you say." We discovered we shared a love for hiking, classic movies, and terrible dad jokes. It felt easy. Natural. When he asked for my number at the end of the evening, I didn't hesitate. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant downtown. The conversation flowed as easily as it had at the party. "Tell me about Emma," I said, genuinely curious about his daughter. His face lit up. "She's brilliant, really into art and photography. She's going through that typical teenage phase where she thinks she knows everything, but underneath it all, she's got a good heart." We started seeing each other regularly. Movie nights, weekend hikes, quiet dinners at home. For the first time in years, I found myself thinking about something other than work. The topic of meeting Emma came up naturally after a few months of dating. "I think she'd like you," David said one evening as we walked through the park. "She's been asking about you." I felt a flutter of nervousness. "Are you sure it's not too soon?" "Jenna, we've been dating for 4 months, I think it's time." The meeting was arranged for the following weekend. Emma would come to one of my spas first, then we'd all have dinner together. I spent hours making sure everything would be perfect. When Emma walked into the spa, I saw David in her features, the same warm brown eyes and easy smile. She seemed shy at first, but as I showed her around the spa and introduced her to the staff, she began to open up. "This is so cool," she said, looking around the treatment room. "Dad said you own all of these?" 8 locations now, I replied, trying not to sound like I was bragging. "Would it be okay if I tried some of the treatments?" she asked hesitantly. I smiled and handed her a VIP membership card. "Consider this a welcome gift." Her eyes lit up, and for a moment, I saw the child beneath the teenage exterior. "Really? Thank you." That evening at dinner, Emma couldn't stop talking about her spa experience. David caught my eye across the table and smiled, and I felt something shift inside me. Maybe, just maybe, this could work. As the months passed, our relationship deepened. David and I fell into a comfortable rhythm, and Emma seemed to genuinely enjoy spending time with me. She'd stop by my spas regularly, sometimes bringing her friends, and we'd have long conversations about school, boys, and her dreams for the future. One evening, about a year into our relationship, David and I were having dinner at my house when he suddenly became serious. "Jenna," he said, reaching across the table to take my hand. "This past year has been amazing. You brought so much joy into my life, into our lives. I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you. Will you marry me?" The ring he pulled out was simple but elegant, just like our relationship. Tears welled up in my eyes as I nodded. "Yes, absolutely yes." We decided on a simple ceremony at City Hall, with just immediate family present. When we told Emma, her reaction wasn't quite what I expected. "But why can't we have a big wedding?" she protested. "I wanted to be a bridesmaid. Everyone at school talks about their parents' weddings." I pulled her into a hug. "Sweetie, you have your whole life ahead of you. Your wedding can be as big and beautiful as you want it to be." After the wedding, David and Emma moved into my house. I had the best room in the house redecorated for Emma, letting her choose everything from the paint colors to the furniture. She seemed thrilled with her new space, and for a while, everything was perfect. We traveled together, tried new restaurants, and spent cozy evenings watching movies. Emma would often join me in my home office, doing her homework while I worked on spa business. It felt like the family I'd always wanted. But there was one dark cloud in our otherwise sunny sky: David's ex-wife, Karen. From the moment we met, she made it clear that she didn't approve of me. She wouldn't even speak to me directly when she came to pick up Emma, instead sending messages through David or Emma. "Your mother seems intense," I said to Emma one day after a particularly cold exchange. Emma shrugged. "She's just protective. She keeps track of everything she spends on me to show Dad she contributes more, down to my monthly supplies. She has spreadsheets." I found this obsession with money strange, but I kept my opinions to myself. After all, Karen was still Emma's mother, and I didn't want to cause any tension. The first signs of trouble were subtle. I noticed Emma paying more attention to price tags when we went shopping. She'd make comments about how much I spent on myself versus what I spent on her. At first, I brushed it off as typical teenage behavior, but it started becoming more frequent and more pointed. One day, I caught her going through my closet, examining the labels on my clothes. "Emma, what are you doing?" She jumped, looking guilty. "Just looking, that's a nice dress." "How much did it cost?" "That's not really appropriate to ask," I said gently. "Is something bothering you?" She stormed out without answering. Later, I tried to discuss it with David. "Honey, I'm worried about Emma's fixation on money," I said as we got ready for bed. David waved it off. "She's a teenager, they all go through phases. This feels different, it's like she's keeping score." "You're overthinking it," he said, kissing my forehead. "Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. The situation came to a head during Emma's senior year. One evening, she spread college brochures across our dining room table. "Look at these programs," she said excitedly. "This one's in New York, and this one's in California. I looked at the brochures, all prestigious private colleges with astronomical tuition fees. Have you considered some more affordable options? I asked carefully. Emma's expression changed instantly. Why would I need to? You're rich, you can afford these schools. I looked at David for support, but he just nodded. Of course you'll help with Emma's education, right, honey? The presumption in their voices stunned me. We need to look at all options, I said firmly, not just the most expensive ones. We need to consider Emma's academic abilities and our budget. Emma's reaction was explosive. She swept the brochures off the table, sending them flying. You're just being greedy. You have all this money, but you won't help me? Emma, please calm down, I tried to reason with her. Money doesn't grow on trees, I work hard for what I have. I'm going to Mom's, she screamed, running upstairs. Minutes later, she came down with a packed bag and stormed out to a waiting taxi. After she left, David turned on me. You were too harsh with her, she's just a teenager with dreams. Dreams need to be realistic, I argued. And since when is it automatically assumed that I'll pay for everything? He went to bed angry that night, and I slept alone, wondering how things had gone so wrong. Days passed, and Emma stayed at her mother's house. My calls went straight to voicemail. One evening, as I was walking past David's home office, I heard his voice, unusually serious and low. I wasn't one to eavesdrop, but something in his tone made me pause. Daddy, you have to make her pay for my college, Emma was saying, her voice clear through the speaker. Put pressure on her. She has the money. Mom says she's just being stingy. I expected David, my husband, the man who had promised to build a life with me, to set his daughter straight. Instead, his response sent chills down my spine. I'll try my best, sweetheart, don't worry. Jenna will come around. I know exactly how to handle this. The casual confidence in his voice, the way he talked about manipulating me, it made me feel physically ill. I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Handle what exactly? I asked, stepping into the doorway. David nearly dropped his phone. So this is your plan? Conspire with Emma behind my back to pressure me into paying for everything? His initial shock quickly transformed into defensiveness. Well, why shouldn't you? You're wealthy, you don't have children of your own. You could be a real mother to Emma if you wanted to. Instead, you're being selfish with your money. His words hit me like physical blows. Selfish? For not wanting to be manipulated and pressured? For expecting my husband to discuss major financial decisions with me instead of plotting behind my back. We argued for another hour, going in circles, with David refusing to see anything wrong with his and Emma's behavior. Finally, I stormed out of his office, tears of frustration burning in my eyes. I'm sleeping in the guest room tonight, I announced. I can't even look at you right now. I barely slept that night, my mind racing with thoughts of betrayal and manipulation. The next morning, David left for work early, barely speaking to me. I was sitting in my home office, trying to focus on work, but failing miserably. When I heard the front door open, Emma was back. I found her in the kitchen, acting as if nothing had happened, making herself a sandwich. My hands were shaking as I confronted her. I overheard your conversation with your father last night, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. Would you like to explain why you're trying to manipulate your father into pressuring me? She turned to face me, and I was shocked by the calculating look in her eyes. Gone was the sweet teenager I thought I knew. You're not my mother, she said coldly. You can't demand explanations from me. No, I'm not your mother, I agreed, fighting to keep my composure. But I am your father's wife, and this is my house. I deserve basic respect, Emma. What she said next made my blood run cold. Fine, let's talk about respect, she said, setting down her sandwich and folding her arms. I'll call you Mom and treat you with all the respect you want if you pay for my college and give me $2,000 monthly allowance. That's fair, isn't it? I stared at her, hardly recognizing the girl in front of me. The manipulation was so blatant, so calculated, it took my breath away. A laugh escaped me, a sharp, bitter sound. "Are you actually trying to sell your affection to me?" "I'm being practical," she replied, her face hard. "You have money, I need money. You want a daughter, I need a mother who can provide for me properly. It's a win-win." "I'm not buying your love, Emma," I said, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay calm. Her face contorted with anger. "You're just a childless old woman who'll die alone. Mom was right about you, you're nothing but a miser who hoards her money instead of helping family." In that moment, everything became painfully clear. Karen's influence had poisoned Emma's mind, turning her into a manipulative, money-obsessed version of herself. The realization felt like ice in my veins. I hadn't just lost my stepdaughter, I'd never really had her to begin with. When David came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room. My hands were clasped tightly in my lap, knuckles white with tension. I'd spent the afternoon alternating between crying and feeling numb, but now I was ready to confront him. "We need to talk about what happened with Emma today," I said as he walked in, still loosening his tie. His expression immediately hardened. "What did she do now?" The defensive tone in his voice, automatically taking Emma's side before even hearing what happened, made my stomach clench. I recounted the conversation with Emma, her attempt to essentially sell her affection, the cruel insults she'd hurled at me. His response shocked me even more than his daughter's behavior. He ran his hands through his hair in frustration and exploded, "I'm so tired of your complaints about Emma. Every single day, it's something new. She's going through a difficult time, she needs support, not constant criticism." I stood up, trembling. "Support?" "She tried to extort money from me. She literally put a price tag on calling me mom, $2,000 a month plus college tuition. How can you not see how wrong that is?" "Money you can easily afford," he countered, his voice rising. "Emma's just trying to secure her future. If you really loved us, you'd want to help." Those words hit me like a physical blow. If I really loved them? After everything I'd done, everything I'd tried to be for them? I sank back down onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. I spent another sleepless night, this time in my bedroom while David took the guest room. As I lay there in the dark, I thought about every moment that had led to this, every red flag I'd ignored, every manipulation I'd excused. By morning, I'd made my decision. At dinner the next evening, I waited until both David and Emma were seated. They were talking and laughing as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't both tried to manipulate and hurt me. The casual way they could switch between cruelty and normalcy made me feel sick. I cleared my throat. "I've made a decision about college." Emma and David exchanged triumphant looks that made my skin crawl. They thought they'd won. "I'm not paying for your college education, Emma," I said clearly. "Not the expensive options, not the cheaper ones. And I'm certainly not paying you $2,000 a month to pretend to love me. In fact, I'm not paying you anything at all." The screaming started immediately. Emma began sobbing dramatically, big theatrical tears rolling down her face. David jumped to his feet, his chair scraping against the floor. "You'll change your mind right now," he demanded, looming over me, "or everything is over between us." A strange calm settled over me. This was it, the moment when all pretense fell away. I looked up at him, meeting his angry glare with steady eyes. "I'm glad you said that first," I said quietly. "I've already called my lawyer about divorce papers." The color drained from David's face. He stumbled back a step. "I was just joking, I don't want a divorce." "Jenna, honey, let's talk about this." "Well, I do want a divorce," I cut him off. "And thanks to our prenup, you won't be getting anything from me. I want you both out of my house tomorrow." "You can't do this," Emma shrieked, her fake tears turning to real ones. "Daddy, tell her she can't do this." I stood up, my chair sliding back silently. "I can, and I am. I suggest you both start packing." As I walked upstairs, I could hear Emma's hysterical crying echoing through the house, punctuated by angry shouts from David. For the first time in months, the sound didn't affect me at all. In fact, I felt lighter with each step I took away from them. The next morning dawned gray and cold. I'd barely slept, spending most of the night listening to the sounds of David and Emma moving around the house, packing their things. Around dawn, I heard David leave for work, presumably to start looking for a new place to live. A few hours later, there was a soft knock on my bedroom door. Emma's voice came through, sounding sweet and contrite, so different from her usual tone that alarm bells immediately rang in my head. I pressed record on my phone before answering. "Jenna, can we talk? Please?" When I opened the door, she stood there in her pink pajamas, looking young and vulnerable. Her eyes were red from crying, and she was wringing her hands nervously. For a moment, I almost fell for it. "I need to tell you something," she said, perching on the edge of my bed like she used to do when we first became family. "It was all Mom's idea, everything. She told me to demand the money and expensive college. She said you'd give in if I pushed hard enough, that rich people always do." I watched her performance with a mixture of disgust and fascination. She was good, the trembling lip, the occasional tear, the way she glanced up at me through her lashes. How many times had I fallen for this act before? "Mom said," she sniffled, "she said that you were probably lonely and desperate for a family, that you'd pay anything to keep us. But I've been thinking all night, and I feel terrible about what I did." She reached for my hand. I pulled away. "I've thought about it," she continued, her voice taking on an eager edge, "and I have a new proposal. I'll stop talking to Mom completely, cut her out of my life entirely, if you'll still pay for college. Any college, not just the expensive ones. And maybe just $1,000 a month instead of $2,000. That's reasonable, right?" The disgust I felt must have shown on my face because she quickly added, "I really mean it this time. I'll be the perfect daughter. I'll help with your business, I'll spend holidays with you instead of Mom, everything." I stood up, needing to put physical distance between us. "So you're willing to abandon your mother for a lower price? Do you even hear yourself, Emma? You're literally trying to sell your relationship with your own mother." "But..." "No," I cut her off, "there are no buts. Get out of my house, Emma. You and your father need to leave today. I don't care where you go, but you can't stay here." She fled in tears, slamming doors as she went. By afternoon, they were gone, neither of them saying goodbye. I walked through the empty house, finding small signs of their hasty departure, a forgotten sock under the bed, a half-empty bottle of shampoo in the shower, Emma's college brochures still scattered across the dining room floor. A few days later, my phone rang, Karen's number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Karma has worked," she crowed, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Your marriage is over. You'll die alone, just like I said. I knew you weren't good enough for them." I waited for her to finish her gloating, then said sweetly, "I have a surprise for you, Karen." I sent her the audio recording of Emma offering to cut ties with her for money. She called back immediately, her voice shrill with panic. "That's fake. You edited it, Emma would never." "She would, and she did," I cut her off. "You raised her to be this way, Karen. You taught her to see relationships as transactions, to measure love in dollars and cents. Now you get to live with the results of your parenting. I hope you're proud." I hung up before she could respond, blocked her number, and poured myself a glass of wine. For the first time in days, I smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, exactly, but it was real, I was free. The divorce was quick, thanks to the prenup. David didn't contest anything, he couldn't. I heard through mutual friends that Karen had a massive falling out with Emma after hearing the recording, refusing to help with college at all. Sitting in my quiet house now, I feel at peace. The emptiness I once feared is now a blessing. My spas are thriving, I've started traveling more, and I've remembered who I was before I tried to force myself into a ready-made family. Sarah called recently, apologizing for introducing me to David. "Don't," I told her. I learned valuable lessons from this experience. Sometimes what looks perfect on paper turns out to be anything but perfect in reality. Sarah was quiet for a moment. Have you heard anything about them? No, and I don't want to, I replied honestly. That chapter of my life is closed. Looking back, I can see all the red flags I chose to ignore. The way Karen obsessed over money, how David never really stood up to either his ex-wife or his daughter, Emma's gradual transformation from a seemingly sweet teenager to a manipulative young woman. But I don't regret the experience. It taught me that being alone doesn't mean being lonely. My business continues to expand. I've opened 2 new spa locations in neighboring cities, and I'm considering franchising opportunities. My life is full of work I love, friends who genuinely care about me, and the freedom to make my own choices without emotional blackmail or financial manipulation. Sometimes, when I'm having dinner with friends or working late at one of my spas, I think about Emma and hope she eventually learns that love and respect can't be bought. But those thoughts are becoming rarer. I've moved on, focusing on my own happiness and success. As I walk through my quiet house now, I no longer feel the emptiness I once did. Instead, I feel gratitude for the life I've built and the wisdom to protect it. Sometimes the family you think you want isn't the life you actually need. I learned that lesson the hard way, but I'm stronger for it.